Joining us now are the barrister Paula Rhone-Adrien and GP Dr Phillipa Kaye. Dr Kaye, first of all, I mean, this is just heartbreaking. One thing that none of us can understand is why it took so long for Guy's Hospital to contact the people who were affected and say that they think they may have lost their embryos.
Absolutely. So first of all, this is a really, really heartbreaking story. And that people will choose to freeze eggs or freeze embryos for lots of reasons to preserve their fertility. For example, let's say they feel that they're not ready to have a child, but they would like to in the future. But actually, for lots of women, they do it before treatment for cancer. And it may be that their cancer treatment, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, then puts them into an early menopause, which of course then impacts their ability to get pregnant naturally afterwards. And the real concern that we have here when it comes to medicine, if a mistake is made, you own up to it and you talk about it early, as soon as you know. And the fact that it took so long, to me, is even more concerning.
Yeah, because the treatment was in autumn 22. That's the time where they think the fluid batch was used. The drug company alerted, we understand, the NHS in February 2023, but this was not communicated to the patients. And of course, the fear is that many of the people who donated their eggs may have then gone on to have a treatment which they could have not had if they thought there was an opportunity to freeze some more of their eggs or go through that procedure once more. And so there are people who may be looking at this window of opportunity that was slammed shut on them because they just didn't have the information. It seems almost scandalous, this.
I think that in each individual case, whether or not the extra time would have changed things will be very individualized. Because it may be that actually you freeze your eggs and you go through that process and then you start cancer treatment straight away. And it may be that there is something else that has happened. And of course, just the simple passage of time means that you're getting older. And fertility is linked to age, and the likelihood of IVF working using frozen eggs or frozen embryos is also impacted by age. And I think that the HFEA, the organisation that looks after this kind of thing in the UK, will be investigating, because there is definitely a gap of knowledge there about why weren't these women told.
And Phillipa, if I might ask you, just sort of going back a stage in a way, this is the NHS we're talking about. This isn't a private fertility clinic that we're discussing. And as you and Nick have been discussing, it's perfectly possible that a lot of these women froze their eggs because they knew they were about to have some sort of treatment that might put their fertility in danger. Can you just explain to us what fertility treatment and egg freezing the NHS does and doesn't do?
What happens when you get to the point of having the discussion about egg freezing? And there are various different times that might happen. So it might happen in an already pretty traumatic time. You're going to need to have chemotherapy. You're going to need to have radiotherapy. We're going to delay that for a month or so whilst you consider this. Or it might be happening, for example, as you're just getting older and you'd like to freeze your eggs to preserve your fertility. So what happens is that we give you medication to suppress your menstrual cycle, so that we can then take over that, and that gives the drugs a better chance of working. And then you have injections of FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, which is a hormone that women produce naturally in the brain that tells their ovaries to produce follicles from which you get eggs. But we give higher doses because we don't just want 1 or 2 eggs. We want lots, 12, 14, 15 eggs to mature and develop, so that we have as many eggs as we can to freeze or to fertilize and freeze the embryos. And during that process, you will have regular scans. And then we give you what's called the trigger shot, which is another hormone called HCG, which helps those eggs mature. And then the process of egg collection is generally done under sedation. And we use the ultrasound guidance and a needle through the vagina into the ovary to collect the eggs. And then at that point, you either freeze the eggs or you fertilize them with sperm, donor sperm or partner sperm. And then you can freeze embryos on day 1, or on day 2 or 3, or you wait until they're a little more developed on day 5 to 6. So you can freeze at different stages. And at that point, we now have ordinarily more time. And here the situation is, unfortunately, where during the freezing process, something seems to have gone wrong that may affect the quality and the viability of those eggs or embryos when it comes to defrosting them.
Paula Rhone-Adrien, it does sound as if that there's potential for a claim here because the service was not as it was advertised. Something went horrendously wrong. What's your view on this, especially given that we know that it's possible that other clinics might have been affected by this dodgy batch of fluid that was sent over from the States?
Good afternoon, Nick. Good afternoon, Daisy. Thank you so much. Yes, so to answer your question, potentially there could be a claim. What we are seeing unfolding, sadly, before our eyes is potential negligence on the part of the company that provided the solution that I understand was used to freeze the eggs, to maintain them and to keep them safe during that freezing process. It's quite usual for there to be such claims in terms of any type of medical negligence. That isn't unusual for us in the legal remit. However, what I did want to touch on was, of course, when we talk about financial compensation, in a case such as this, it's not really going to meet the needs and the concerns of the patients and the service users. What they wanted, of course, was healthy embryos. And so that sadness, that deep loss that they are going to be feeling, and that's mothers and fathers, I think I would be insulting them to suggest that any kind of financial claim would be able to compensate them against that.
But Paula, what about the issue of the delay? In the world of the law, does that make a difference? Because just looking at the statement from the hospital, they used this freezing agent in the autumn of 2022. They were made aware by the manufacturers that there was an issue with it in March 2023, so 5 months later. It's now nearly March 2024, and this only seems to be coming to light. So we don't know exactly how long they took, but it seems they took many, many months to tell these parents concerned that their embryos might not be viable anymore.
And this is what adds, isn't it, Daisy? This is what adds to the pain and suffering. So we have loss, of course, potentially in terms of the embryos, the viable embryos. And now we have pain and suffering in terms of that wait, that long and painful wait until they were told. It can get complicated, though, Daisy, because in this process, we need to look at the chain of negligence and who was responsible in terms of that at each stage in that chain. And it may well be, of course, that the NHS, I think it's Guy's and St Thomas's, and there is a facility in Sheffield, they are going to be saying, well, look, at the time that we were notified about the product, we did all we could to identify the patients who were likely to be affected by this. That's going to be a key for the patients. You know, when were they notified, and did Guy's and St Thomas's, did the Sheffield facility contact them as soon as they possibly could?
I'm going to put my neck on the line there and say that is going to be the absolute crux of the argument, with, I suspect, many of these parents saying no, they were not informed as quickly as possible, and the NHS saying maybe they did do their best. I'm really sorry to say that we've run out of time, but I can imagine this is going to be a story that we will have to return to more than once on TalkTV. Dr Phillipa Kaye and Paula Rhone-Adrien.